I graduated from Scripps College in 3.5 years while working 3 jobs and went directly into graduate school where I started my first doctoral program in brain and cognitive sciences and then enrolled in my second doctoral program in clinical psychology. I was the first person to be concurrently enrolled in 2 doctoral programs at USC, and I did it so that I could fully understand the neural basis for behavior and be able to work with clinical populations at the same time. I'm an adjunct professor of psychology at USC and a professional speaker on the science of happiness. Whenever I say that to people, they always say science of happiness, like it sounds like some super fluffy topic or something like that, but it's not. Happiness is based in research. In fact, researchers have been defining happiness for hundreds of years and trying to find out what is the secret to happiness. Researchers have found ways to actually define happiness, and there are a lot of different definitions of happiness. And there's actually like a World Happiness Report. People always laugh at me when I say, oh, I just read the World Happiness Report. It's a real thing, trying to understand which nations are the happiest and trying to understand why are they so happy.
We're going to talk about happiness. We're going to define it. We're going to talk about how we quantify it and measure it, because social psychology or social sciences, right, they're not as straightforward as like chemistry, right? You can titrate a solution and you can say what percentage of the solution is alcohol, and there's a definite answer, right? With happiness, it's a little bit harder, right? I teach the class Psychology of Marriage and Family, and we spend a good 3 classes trying to define what is a marriage and what is a family. It looks different. It looks different depending on your perspective, who you're talking to, how you're measuring it, how you're quantifying it. But we know in psychology especially, we have to be able to measure and quantify and define things before we can actually make any meaningful discoveries about what we're discussing, right?
But you gave a lot of great examples. Some may be more applicable to adults than kids, so that was one of the questions in there. Could you give some examples of things that parents can work on with their children to kind of help out with the science of happiness for them?
It depends on the age of the child, obviously. The younger children, they still need a lot of time with their parents. They need a lot of interaction with parents. So spending one-on-one time with your child doing the things that they love is really important.
We know as driven, hardworking adults that we want what's best for our kids. We want them to get into good schools, we want them to get good grades, we want them to be well-adjusted and to have friends and to have all kinds of extracurriculars that will make them stand out on their college transcripts. What I know, and what I'm sure you know, is that the most important thing is actually their mental health. If they're completely stressed out before they get to college, how well are they actually going to perform when they get there? This might include dialing back some of their activities or some of their extra classes in order to help them be a little bit less stressed and a little bit less anxious long term.
From an evolutionary perspective, we have a predisposition to be negative, to look for negative, and we do. We're always assessing for the threat or what's wrong, what's going to go wrong, what's going to happen next. And that's where anxiety comes from, right? Where is this going to go wrong?
So why does it matter? Why does talking about happiness matter? Well, it matters because we know what the statistics are. We know that people overwhelmingly are struggling with being depressed, anxious, substance abuse, eating disorders, all of these really negative psychological disorders. And we know that people are trying to be less anxious and less depressed. And my perspective on life is always, instead of looking at the negative, right, we want to look at the positive aspect. So instead of being less depressed, how can we be more happy? But we also know that we have kind of this baseline level of happiness for most people, very comparable to our weight. So most people, we have like a set weight, and if we work out and watch what we eat, we can change our set weight. And if we don't, then we generally are around the same level of weight. It's kind of the same with our happiness levels. So happiness has been shown to be about 50% genetic, which I think is really interesting. They've done twin studies in behavioral genetics to find out that we really do take after our parents when it comes to our preset levels of happiness. I'm excited to share all of this research with you. Email me to book today.